Welcome to Melt. I'm Suresh Venkat. This week, we're putting P&G skincare brand Olay in the spotlight. Now, last month, the brand rolled out a new installment of its STEMTheGap initiative. The campaign includes a digital film, a virtual mentor chatbot, mentorship, and scholarship programs. To know more, we are in conversation with Priyali Kamath, Senior Vice President, Skin and Personal Care for Procter & Gamble Asia Pacific, Middle East and Africa. Why did Olay choose to highlight the STEM cause? How does it continue to build this association and what have the benefits been? Let's find out as we get ready to melt with Priyali Kamath, who joins in, by the way, via web link from Singapore. All right. Hi, Priyali. Welcome to Melt. Before we dive into now this iteration of your campaign, can we go back to the roots of this campaign? So my first question to you would be, why did Olay choose to address this topic of the STEM gender gap in the first place?
It's a great question, Suresh, and thank you for welcoming Olay and me onto your show. So not many people know this about skincare, but for the enthusiasts out there, there's a lot of science in skin chemistry. And skincare, many people from the outside look at it and say this is all about, foo-foo dust and magic. But in reality, there's a lot of chemistry, a lot of work behind the scenes led by research and development that goes into creating these products that have real transformatory effects on skincare. So science is very much part of our DNA. As a fun fact, Olay was invented by a chemist way back 70 years ago in South Africa. And there was this gentleman called Graham Wolfe who invented Olay as a pink lotion to address his wife's extremely dry skin. And from there, the brand has gone on to become a global phenomenon acquired by Procter & Gamble. And over the years, has become one of the largest, if not the largest, masstige skincare brands in the world. What we realize is that in order for us to really deliver on these promises that we make to the consumers on what we will do for their skin, we need to continually up our game on being scientifically advanced. And consumers know this. They know that there's no magic in it. It's science, and it is incredible to see how invested our real consumers are in understanding the technology behind our brands. So putting that thought aside for a moment, Olay, driven by science, powered by science, also appeals primarily to women of the world, right? Women of all ages, colors, the entire gamut. And as we thought about what we can do as a brand to serve our consumers better, we wanted to put these two things together. The science that makes the product what it is, and the opportunity for women. And that's when we came about the realization that as we looked into the future, the biggest area of concern that we share for our fellow female consumers is that the world is moving towards more and more STEM careers. And the participation of women in the STEM workforce is still abysmally low. And that's where we, as a brand rooted in science, wanted to step in and make a real difference.
Okay, fair enough. So Olay is a brand that's rooted in science. Now, this is the second iteration of this campaign. How did you end up measuring the effectiveness of the earlier campaigns, for instance?
When we started out our STEM journey, we didn't know what to expect. We did it because we thought this is the right thing to do, to stand by our consumers, be their cheerleaders beyond just the functional benefits of skincare. But what we were really surprised by is that when we started the campaign, and the episode 1 of Olay STEMTheGap really shone the light on unconscious bias that keeps women back or holds them back from really expressing their passions and desires and pursuing STEM careers. This unconscious bias starts from a very young age. So when we shone the spotlight on this through a film that told that story, we were amazed at the positive sentiment and response that we've got from consumers. So as we look at metrics and how we measure our advertising effectiveness, we did see that the engagement rate, the view-through rate of this film actually was among the highest that we had ever seen on any Olay film, whether it was a functional message about product, whether it was a campaign about any new launch, or in this case, the STEM story. And so what we realized is this film is actually touching a chord. We saw not just, appeal for the film and likability and engagement go up. We also saw purchase intent among our consumers go up. We saw our equity as a scientifically advanced brand, which is very important to us, start to trend north. So all of these things together told us that driving Olay as a force for growth as well as a force for good is really the right thing to do to deliver a sustainable business model.
All right, Priyali, continuing the conversation on the same campaign, what were some of the lessons you learned from the earlier iterations that you implemented in this iteration?
I don't know if I would call it a lesson that we learned, but certainly the feedback that we got from people who engaged in round one of the STEM story was that while we had focused on talking about unconscious bias, and we had supported that with ensuring that we help girls who want to study STEM actually go ahead and study it by offering scholarships in partnership with Lead School. The real issue did not seem to be in education, and this was actually very eye-opening. So as you look at the statistics, right, what we had sort of hung our hat on was the fact that in about a decade from today in India, 80% of all jobs are going to have some STEM component or the other in them. But only 14% of today's STEM workforce are women. And so we said this is the big gap that we want to address. The way we went about doing it was talking about unconscious bias and helping girls study STEM, go through the school process with better education and with great results over there. But what we realized was the question that came back to us was when you look at the STEM graduates in India, actually the issue is not about education so much. So India actually has a lot to be proud of on this front because I think nearly 50%, 47%, if I remember the number correctly, of all STEM graduates in India are actually women. This is the highest in the world, or at least one of the highest, if not the highest. And as a result, the real drop off is not happening at education, which is the case for many other countries, but it's happening between graduating and the workforce. And so STEM 2.0 really went into looking at what is it that is causing these very talented, highly accomplished STEM graduates to drop out even before they've started on life's real journey, which is in the workforce. And that's what we implemented in STEM 2.0.
I'm curious about the same thing too, Priyali. What prevents all these talented STEM graduate women from entering the workforce? Why is this drop-off rate so high in between graduating and working?
That was exactly the question that we set out to answer. I was talking to several people who'd engaged with us in this conversation about this time, maybe 18 months ago. And, that piqued our curiosity too. And while we continue to believe that shining the light on unconscious bias was the right place to start this journey, discovering as we unpeel the onion that the issue was at the drop off led us to start really engaging with, talking to, doing research, hard research with STEM graduates, both women who had joined the workforce, those who had dropped out, those who never even entered. And as we did this work and as we talked to accomplished people in the field, there were many reasons that came out as being barriers to women continuing their journey in STEM. Some of the obvious ones were things like, life stage, family pressure. Once I get married, once I have kids, it's too hectic. I can't balance it all and do both. Others were related to things like, I can't, I'm in a dual career with a husband. We have to make choices. I can't travel where my job needs me to go if it's a STEM high pressure job. But interestingly, many of these reasons are actually not unique to STEM. They are true for women in the workforce in general, right? And when it came to STEM specifically, I think the thing that struck a chord with us the most was the stories from women who said, I got in there. I stood up, I put up my hand, I tried. But when I got into the workforce, I felt that there were so many barriers closing down on me. There wasn't a path. There wasn't somebody I could look up to and say, she did it. She knows how to bust through this barrier. She knows how to get to the next level, solve this problem, figure out how to navigate the organization. And I don't have that someone I can talk to, that role model, that mentor. And when this first came out, we thought, yeah, okay, it's mentorship. It could be a thing, but we didn't know. But we kept hearing it over and over again. It came out in these little stories. And when it did, we decided, hang on, there looks like there's something really deep over here. And so we actually ran some research, some proper quantitative research, surveying women who were in STEM careers and those who had dropped out. And we'll ask them, what were your top reasons for dropping out? And shockingly, more than 80% of them actually said it's lack of role models, lack of mentors. And so that is really in our mind where we need to zoom the camera, where we need to say, how do we address this issue of creating a path where someone can see what they want to be?
And your campaign, of course, has fantastic role models in it, women from across the ages who've pioneered across all branches of STEM. And these are role models, I imagine, not just for women, but for anybody aspiring for a career in science. My question to you is this. On one hand, we complain that we live in an attention deficit world, that content is getting shorter and shorter, and you've released a long format, almost a mini feature film. How do you explain this contradiction between seemingly shorter attention spans and this long format film?
I'm a big believer, Suresh, that when the story is worth listening to, it's worth telling, consumers will, or people, human beings will engage. And that's what we've actually seen. So you're absolutely right. It's 3.5 minute film, not something that an advertiser like Procter and Gamble, who specializes in the 15-second and the 30-second normally does. So I was a bit nervous when I first saw this, and the team shared it with me. The agency, Anand Gandhi, a fantastic film producer and director, it was his love story, this film. And when he shared it with me, I was like, I love it, but is it too long? We took a risk on it. We said, you know what? It's a story worth telling. We think it's got a message that is powerful, and we put it out there. And encouragingly, this film has even surpassed the previous one, which was about a little over 2 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. It surpassed that one on what we call view-through rate, which is how many consumers or people watch the film from the beginning right through the end. And that to me is a sign that it's not really an attention deficit world. It is about the quality of what you say, the meaningfulness of your message, which will get the attention in today's world, in yesterday's world, and possibly in the future.
And this time the campaign also has a chatbot, ISU. What kind of questions have kept your chatbot busy?
ISU is the most fun part of our campaign. So think about it. We are advocating for women in science, and our solution to that actually is an artificial intelligence solution or a virtual mentor. ISU is basically a hive intelligence of real women in STEM who address or provide the first level of defense, as I call it, for women who need access to a mentor and don't have one readily. The kind of questions we've been getting are absolutely fascinating. So it ranges from the very basic, like what is STEM or what is STEAM? We get that one a lot. To, I've taken a gap year. How do I find my next job? To even far more nuanced ones, which go beyond, honestly, I think, just the very fundamental black and white definitions of things that many people ask, and are really the role of a mentor. Like we had one person say, I am a woman leading a team full of men. And, I'm not sure if they really respect me. What can I do to get them to respect me? So there's the whole range. And of course, we also get the occasional, how do you solve this math equation, which is really funny. But yeah, we get that too.
Any insights for marketers who may be a bit wary about experimenting with AI or chatbots? Any learnings that you'd care to share?
Look, first up, I'll say we're not the expert in that space, right? And with ISU, we dipped our toes into the space for the first time ourselves. Our biggest learning is do it right. Don't necessarily do it fast. There's a huge temptation to jump in there, piggyback on the latest sort of publicly available technologies and create something. The risks are large and they're unknown. And so our approach was, let's make sure we do this right. Do it in a very safe manner where we protect our consumers, protect people who are seeking help, and make sure that we're giving them, the right responses that are really meaningful, and yet at the same time don't compromise in any way things like data privacy, or even, have a generative AI, for example, solution that could lead them astray with answers that none of us can be accountable for. So I would say that the right way to do it is do it slowly but correctly.
And not to belabor the point too much, but for any young marketers who are tuning into the show and watching us, what are some of the things that marketers should not do when dealing with AI and chatbots?
I think the first and most fundamental thing is don't do it just because it's cool and it's the shiny new object out there. The biggest thing, honestly, about all technology-enabled solutions is be clear that they genuinely are a solution for your business problem. If they're not, even if it sounds cool, don't do it. So in our case, the reason that ISU actually worked was because what we were trying to do was give access to women all over India, in far-flung places, in rural areas, in schools, in colleges, in the workplace, access to a first line of defense virtual mentor where none existed. And technology really does provide us a solution for that in the form of this virtual mentor. We did it because that was right. There have been many other use cases that I have been exposed to on AI or the use of chatbots or artificial intelligence personas that actually don't really add much value. And my advice to marketers would be make sure that as you embark on this journey, you're very clear on what your business problem is and you're looking for the right solution for that, not locking into a solution and then finding the problem that it could potentially address.
Okay, so Priyali, you have an extraordinarily well-made film. You have this chatbot who can serve as a mentor. What are some of the other initiatives that you're doing as part of this campaign?
Thanks for asking that, Suresh. There's a whole bunch actually. So first and foremost, I mentioned that last year we had actually started a scholarship program in partnership with the lead school that gave access to quality education in STEM to girls who may not have otherwise had this access. That scholarship program continues, and a year and a half out, I'm really delighted to say that all the students, the recipients of the scholarship, have really started to demonstrate great progress in STEM fields, in science and math, even in computers, which is a subject now, coding that is being taught in schools that adopt the lead curriculum. We've seen significant progress for these girls, and we also see genuine excitement in them for the possibilities that these subjects offer as they go into higher education and eventually into careers. The second thing that we do is beyond ISU, which I keep referring to as the first line of defense, we recognize that mentorship is a really big deal. And it sometimes is the thing that stands in the way of the next generation of employees either continuing or dropping out. And so in order to make this a richer experience, what we have done is recognizing that a virtual mentor can only go so far. We've tied up with an NGO called vLookup. vLookup is this NGO that actually connects women who need mentorship with mentors from different industries and all over the world. And it allows them access to a 3 to 4 month mentorship program where they can reach out, they can choose their mentor, and really have a much deeper, richer human connection. So this vLookup mentorship has been great. We've already had, I think, more than 70 people sign up last I checked to get a real mentor. And we've had great partnership and enthusiasm from the broader industry. All our partners, Amazon, Meta, Google, Mindtree, in getting people to sign up to be mentors on the platform. So that's the second thing we do. And then last but not least, internally in Procter, we're very, very proud of the representation we have of women in STEM careers within Procter. And I mentioned Olay is a brand that prides itself on its science. So we have a research and development team of more than 250 scientists, of which more than half are women. And interestingly, we're led by the lead scientist, our R&D leader is a woman called Chandrika Kasturi. She's an American, but of Indian origin, born and grew up in India. And she actually leads the global skin and personal care research and development function for Procter. So employment of women in STEM fields is the last thing that we do. Beyond what I just mentioned on Olay, we have a program called Relaunch, which is at a P&G wide level that hires women who've been on a career break but want to get back into STEM careers. It gives them an opportunity to be hired again into Procter.
So could you tell us how all of this translates into increased sales?
Absolutely. As I said, and I think you asked this question, what did you learn in STEM 1.0, the first chapter of this story? The film that we made did translate into real consumer love for the brand. And when consumers love your brand, they buy more of it, which is top line and bottom line accretion. We saw that happen then. We see it again. Our business in India is doing very well. And I think in no small part, thanks to the investment that we make in STEM, which our consumers see, they recognize, and they vote for us because of that. So this does translate. We believe that when a brand contributes to its community, to its consumers, beyond just the functional benefit that it offers, when it's meaningful, when it's authentic, when it is linked back to a cause that matters, and we are consistent about it, I do think it translates into long-term equity, sales, and profit growth.
Really, what are your expectations from the campaign this time around? Are you evaluating on the same parameters as last time? Do you have new parameters that you're going to be using?
We largely keep to the same parameters. So obviously we look for brand growth as our number one priority, because if the brand doesn't grow, we can't contribute back and that whole virtuous cycle ends. So brand growth, equity growth, that's very important. And then we do look to see if we can influence society. Social change is a good metric to look at. So what we're hoping to see as a result of not just this campaign, but years of continued support for the cause, is that we do want to see that horrifying statistic of just 14% women in the STEM workforce change. And I hope that if we speak again a few years from now, that number would be a lot higher.
And what's the internal plan to drive both viewership, and what kind of engagement are you hoping for from this campaign?
We're very fortunate that we have P&G's massive advertising and media muscle behind us, right? So years of experience with one of the world's largest advertisers. But what's really interesting in this one is beyond what we do to ensure we distribute the film on our media channels, the organic uptake of this particular film was absolutely phenomenal. So within the first week of this film being out there, the amount of commentary that it generated organically was just really, really heartening to see. We had lay people, women in STEM careers. We had men who disagreed, by the way, comment on it. We had advertising critics come in, and the amount of sharing and resharing that happened was an absolute delight to see. Because to me, going back to your earlier question on how do you know that, or how did you believe that people would watch such a long film? It's all about the quality of content, the stimulation that this film has created in sparking a conversation about something that really matters.
And this, of course, is a global campaign, if I'm not mistaken. What were the tweaks or the nuances that you're to introduce for the campaign in India?
What is global is Olay's commitment to helping women in their STEM careers. But the execution of that intent is different by market. So India's campaign is absolutely unique to India. We don't do this anywhere else. The challenges, as I mentioned earlier, actually are different by market. So in India, the challenge is not the education dropout. It is really much more about unconscious bias. And then later, it is about the lack of role models and mentors in the workplace. In other markets, like for example, in the US, what we found is that there's a big dropout in middle school of girls studying science. So when, we start streaming students into, do you want to take science subjects or more the humanities? What we see in markets like the US is fewer girls opt for science when it comes to that pivotal point when they have to choose. That is not India's issue. So our STEM campaign in India was designed for what is true in India, what the need is in India, which is really in this round of the story about mentors and role models.
Really, as a skincare brand, we've seen Olay associate in the past with both celebrities and recently with influencers. What's your take on this need for influencers and their role in commerce? Are they overhyped or?
I don't actually think so. I think our view on influencers is that actually pretty much anyone who uses the brand can be an influencer. And if you start looking at what is the advertising, what are the kind of messages that are resonating with people buying our products, it's more about real people testimonials. So we're seeing an increasing uptake in consumers believing the girl next door kind of person as she applies the cream with no filters in front of you and records the change in her skin over a period of time. So we're seeing that sort of thing work a lot better now. I do think it has to do with the evolution of digital media itself, with the differences that we see across generations. So the younger generations, Gen Z in particular, is all about authentic transformation, no filters. I want to say seeing is believing. And so that is where I think influencers are everyday people who use our products, and we're very happy to partner with them.
Okay, a fun question related to that. As AI technology progresses, we are going to be creating artificial people entirely. I know we can create still images of artificial people. We'll soon be able to create full motion artificial people. Do you think artificial, say, influencers or synthetic influencers are going to challenge both mainline celebrities and influencers?
Well, we'll see. I honestly don't know. I was my 15-year-old son is very much a gamer and into a lot of these things. So I was asking him this question the other day because he was watching me as the whole ISU project developed, and he would sometimes look over my shoulder and see what we were doing. And I asked him this question, and he introduced me to the concept of the uncanny valley. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's human beings react really well when they see things that resemble human beings. So, if you think about it, a snake is less charming than a rabbit because a snake has beady eyes, rabbit has the big eyes that remind you of cute kids. And so as you get, closer and closer to the human form, you resonate much more deeply. But when it becomes something that is an artificial image that looks exactly like a human being, it suddenly goes from being appealing to creepy. So that's the concept of the uncanny valley. I don't know how that will play out. But there is certainly that worry in my head about whether that uncanny valley would eventually allow for artificial influencers to be all that we think they could today. So the technology is one piece, the human reaction to it is a whole other ballgame.
Thank you very much for being part of Melt, and we wish you all the best with this campaign and for the future.
Thank you so much, Suresh. It's a pleasure speaking with you today.
And with that, it's a wrap on this episode. You can follow Melt on social media. The handle is Ready to Melt, or simply log on to readytomelt.com. If you'd like to follow me, I'm at Suvenk on X, formerly known as Twitter. Till next week, goodbye and thanks for watching.